Okay, I think we're recording. Let's see. Yeah. Hello, my name is Mark Anderson with the Chattanooga Writers Guild. And our meeting tonight, I'm going to talk with three authors that meet in, they're a writing group from the Chattanooga Writers Guild. They meet in Hixon, and their book is called The Crazy Buffet, and which is a anthology collection. They have a couple of these. Anyway, I'm good. So we're talking with Kelle Z, Jerry Harwood, and JimmyLee Smith. And I should have started with the names first. Anyway, thanks for being here. And we're going to talk about your writing and about your writers group. So before I get into your writing, let's talk about your writers group that meets in Hixon. You used to meet in restaurants, but currently this is Zoom world. So where do you meet now?
We actually have been meeting virtually through Zoom meetings. It would be nice if somebody had the meeting at the restaurant so we could all see what it looks like again and remember that. But the good thing about that is that if any of us are traveling, and I travel frequently, we're still able to make it to meetings.
So in your meetings, is it a critique group? Like, do you bring what do you do in your meetings?
I think the main purpose of the meetings, we encourage each other in our writing. So we have a variety of things that we will do. I guess it was 2 meetings ago. Calvin, one of our members, brought a character wheel, kind of help us. How do you develop a character in a story? I did the Myers-Briggs one time. Kelly presented the stuff she presented, I think, for the Chattanooga Writers Guild, right? And you came in and brought us a kind of an abbreviated version of that. I don't remember if you were prepping to get ready for it or if it was after and you were doing an after report. So we talk about things like that, but we also go around and talk about what people are writing, how you're writing, encourage, keep some accountability as well. And then we fellowship. So the others may add to that, but I think those are some of the core things we do.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just the encouragement, because I always walk away feeling like now I need to go home and write, and I feel good about it. But we can bring in, we either send ahead of time pieces of work for people to critique, usually not a whole thing, but like a chapter we're working on or some pages we're working on, and then people will look at those and give us some feedback.
About how many?
Regularly scheduled kind of thing.
What's your average attendance to your meetings?
We've been having about 6 or 7 during the Zoom meetings. We usually had about 8 to 10, might be the max we would have when we were at restaurants.
Are you open to new members?
Yeah, we'd like that.
We would love to have new members.
So if someone wants to investigate this group further, I know your listing is on the website of the Chattanooga Writers Guild. Should they just go there and then contact you through that?
If they go there and they send me an email, I'll see that they get on the list that announces our next meetings and our meeting places.
Okay. So let me ask, Kelle, you've been a member of the Chattanooga Writers Guild for quite a while. What has this organization meant to you, and does it help your writing, or why are you a member of Chattanooga Writers Guild?
So when I first moved to Chattanooga, I moved from a Chicago area where I had been involved with a fairly active writing group, and that was one of the first things that I wanted to reestablish here in Chattanooga, and that's where I found the Guild. And from the Guild, I found this small fiction group that met out in Hixon, and I started meeting there, and I've developed some lifelong friendships there. And they are people who are of like mind, and as I think both of my colleagues here online said, it's a group that teaches a little bit, but also holds us accountable and encourages us to keep writing. And so it's fellowship with other writers and learning from them and sharing with them that I find so valuable in the Guild.
Wow, that was said perfectly. Thanks. I mean, I should record that and save it for a promotion.
I think maybe you are recording that. It says so in the corner of my screen.
So that was not rehearsed. That was just from her heart. So we are going to talk. So let me get to your writings, introduce you individually. Kelle Z. Riley, her publications, which some of these I wasn't familiar with. My West Virginia Dad is a family biography. Dangerous Affairs, romance. The Cupcake Cape. She has these cat mystery series. Is there a name for the series?
It's called the Undercover Cat series.
Okay. And number one is
Okay.
Cupcake Caper. You're mean to me. Cupcake Caper. Then Shaken Not Bird. The Tiger's Tail. And then Busted at Bingo is a short story in the Crazy Buffet, according to Sherlock. And that's in the Crazy Buffet. And Tug Good Tells All.
Too good. Too good to be true.
Too good. Okay. So
It's a character name.
I know you're a speaker. It says, let me just read this. Writer, speaker, global traveler, PhD, scientist, martial arts artist, weaves bits of her real life into Undercover Cat series books, which features a scientist turned sleuth who juggles mystery, romance, and the search for a perfect cupcake recipe. Kelle is a full-time chemist who holds multiple U.S. patents. At night, she turns into an author who stopped keeping track of her awards, accolades, pending publications. And we can go to your website, and you do workshop and speaking engagements. We will, at the end of the video, there's a slide that'll give your website.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for putting that together.
And then let's see, we also have, I'm going through my notes here, JimmyLee Smith publishes under the name J. Smith Kirkland. And he has, in the first Crazy Buffet book, first edition is Mama Oya. No, that's in number 2, because I just read it. Then he has a couple of short stories in the other Crazy Buffet collection. Then he has Growing Up Without Wi-Fi, Tales of Catalan. You have a book coming out, right? Watching Hours is a collection of stories, but what's the book you have coming out, JimmyLee?
I'm working on Witches right now. I've got some edits back from the editor that I've got to finish completing, and looking for the second round from him. But Witches is, in 2010, I did a web series called Witches, and it's based on legends, a lot of Cherokee, Hungarian, different kind of witch legends, but it's a soap opera format. And it's a continuing drama, I was a Dark Shadows fan when I was a kid, so it's along that lines. I decided I would put out all the episodes that I had planned to shoot. I'm going to put them out in short story format.
Okay.
So I've begun that with book 1 will be basically the first 4 episodes of Witches.
Do you tend towards sci-fi or alternative realities, speculative fiction?
What is it? Magical realism, I guess. I'm very much into witches and ghosts and that kind of thing. I grew up in a haunted house, so it sort of had an effect on my writing, I guess.
Yeah, I read that. Interesting. So you also have some good stuff online in your music world. JimmyLee Smith on Bandcamp, and maybe we should put that on the slide too. And that was nice to hear. Some good stuff there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So then we come to Jerry Harwood, born in Ultewa, Tennessee. His mother was an elementary school teacher, and he spent his afternoons reading books in her classroom or in the nearby library. He's currently a writer, which makes sense based on the fact that you're reading this here. He has experimented with other occupations: camp director, program director at a counseling center, college professor, middle school teacher. Jerry has backpacked Europe, taught in Ukrainian university, worked in Rwanda after the genocide, is a first responder, sort of modeled a VW thing, and has a love for Cherry Coke Zero that is only surpassed by his love for his wife, 6 children, grandson. Publications. Currently, you're promoting jam sessions, right? Is that, do you have something else coming out recently? Or
I do. So yeah, Jam Sessions was my first book. I just joined the writers group 2 years ago, just about 2 years ago now, I think. I actually met Jim at a con. They were, he and Kelly were standing there selling books, and I started talking to them, and they invited me to come. And I thought, well, I've always wanted to write. And, you know, I mean, how many more times am I going to get a knock at the door? So I came and joined, and it was great. But my first book came out last March, so it was perfect timing to go around and promote it when everything was shut down. So I have another one that's a novella that is coming out October 1st.
Okay.
So I'm excited about it. Jam Sessions is a middle grade reader, contemporary. And the one that's coming out in October is a retelling of Aztec myth. So it's a little different genre.
All righty. And you have entries into both of the Crazy Buffet books. Right. Did I make that your writing group has put together this collection. Okay, camera, focus on that. And this is the second one. It's fascinating. It's got all kinds of good stuff in here. Did you put this together as a contest, or is it just curated by your members? How would I get into this if I wanted to? And I'm not part of it.
We started, it's just the members that are in it. How it started was we were talking about some of our members don't have anything published. Or one of our members was a ghostwriter that could not tell us what was published. And when people say, "What have you written? And you had nothing to give them," we thought, well, let's have something to give them, and we can make a website and put the book on it. And then we decided we weren't trying to make money, so what do we do with the royalties? And we decided we would donate to young Southern student writers any royalties that we got from the books.
Yeah, it explains that on the website. And so you must have a bank account to run all this through, obviously.
Yeah, I run it through my Illuminator's bank account, which is my writing, my movie making.
Oh, okay, I see. Well, that works.
The beauty about doing the anthology together is that it spurs all of us to become more creative. And I can say personally, when I've been in a slump and I've been wanting to produce something larger, the fact that my fellow group members are depending on me and encouraging me to write something for this anthology really gets that creativity going. And it's, again, that accountability that we have for one another and the brainstorming help that we give each other that really propels our writing careers forward. And I think all of us have gotten more productive since we started doing the annual anthologies.
Do you have a chief editor that has the power to, or how do you decide what's worthy of going into it? What if I write some stuff that's...
If you're in our group, you're obviously worthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually do. We edit each other. So, like for instance, in the one we're creating now, I have a story, and there's 3 members who are going through that story with me, and they're all giving me their edits and feedback. And so we don't have a editor, but we all edit each other. And so I'm going to look at 3 or 4 members' stuff, and I'm going to get feedback from 3 or 4 members' stuff. Sometimes that's minor edits, grammar edits, and sometimes that's more comprehensive. You know, sometimes it's more, you're missing a piece here or something. So
Okay, so it's peer review, basically.
Mhm.
And actually, that just, one of our members, Kate, was trying to start a group where she had contributed to a project where each member wrote a chapter and they compiled it to a book. And she's been trying to get that started, but probably this idea where there's a group already going, and that kind of project would be fun for this kind of group probably. We'll have to, Kate would really love to do that.
We all write vastly different things. And I remember the first book coming out, we kicked around the idea of whether or not we would have a theme for the anthology. And we struggled with that for a bit. And then someone came up and said, the theme is summer. Some are going to be themed and some are not.
Okay.
So, I don't know how we would do if we put our heads together and said we were going to write chapters of a book that then had to become cohesive.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting experiment.
Totally intimidating to me.
We're a very diverse group as far as style and subject matter. Which I think I enjoy that, because it's when we're talking about our books, you know, you're learning about something that you may not delve into on your own. Like I might not go read a historical novel. I like the mysteries like Kelly's writing, and I love Jerry's wit and Calvin's comedy, neither of which I would be good at writing. But it helps give me creative juices just to get involved in reading theirs and listening to them talk about them.
I posted on I had this theme come up, writers write better in community.
Yes.
I think I even put that on our website, and maybe that's controversial. A lot of people would say, no, I just want to write alone. But for some reason, the Chattanooga Writers Guild exists because people like to get to know other writers. And I'm gonna, for now, until someone proves me wrong, I'm gonna say we write better when we write in community. And otherwise, I wouldn't read anyone else's books even. Okay, let's get on to talking about writing. If you were a judge in a contest, or when you read some fiction, we'll just focus on fiction tonight. What is it that you look for that really says, oh, this is amazing? Can you give me a couple of, each of you tell me two things that you would really admire in other people's writings and you like to see in your own, of course. Who wants to go first?
I'll start.
Okay.
The first thing that really draws me into a story is a world or a created world that story lives in with characters that I want to know more about. So I look for somebody that's a natural storyteller that can create that alternative reality that I want to get into. Okay. And then the second thing is really related to that. If I like that alternate reality that you create, I really, really want to visit again. So I want you to have more than one book or story or collection so I can go back again and again and again to your world.
I'm going to interrupt. For some reason, your screen froze there, Kelly. Now you're back. But it's okay. I was thinking, I wonder if we need to pause.
Did you get the audio?
Yeah, the audio is coming through fine. We heard everything. But
did the screen freeze with my mouth open in a funny look?
And flies were going to.
Oh no, that's going to be terrible.
Not. Okay, so that's interesting. So I hear you there, and that I think that shows in your writing from what you described. What about Jerry or Jimmy? Should I just pick on Jerry?
I don't know who you're pointing at, Kelly. On my screen,
at you, Jerry.
There's no one under you, so.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
It's strange that the way it works, we each see a different screen.
That's right.
Well, I'm going to stop pointing then because it makes no sense now.
And so I'll be happy to go next. For me, and I read across genres, always have. So I like fantasy, sci-fi, I like horror, but I'll just as easily sit down with Faulkner or Dostoevsky. I like to read. I even read a romance novel about 3 months ago. I don't do that often, but I mean, I'll just kind of pick up stuff that looks good and read. But you really got to get me in the first 30 pages. I'll put down a lot of books at page 31. You've got to hook me. You've got to make me care about what's happening. So you have great characters, but if there's no good conflict, or you have a really good conflict, but I just don't really care whether the character makes it or not. So I need that hook in the first few chapters. And beyond that, I love the colorful character. Jimmy talks about my sense of humor, but when I read, I love to see that character that's just an oddball, or an oddity, kind of not a social norm, mixes it up. That probably makes me like pulp fiction more than literary fiction, but there's some really good ones in literary fiction too. So, but that's really the two things that I look for when I'm reading.
And speaking of 30 pages, I like short stories. 15 pages is just right. I don't know. Okay, JimmyLee, what do you look for in good fiction writing?
Well, like you, I like short stories, but short or long. They were both mentioning liking the character or caring about whether the character makes it or not. I think that's a big thing to me. There has to be a character that is believable, even if they're like an alien or something, but their character is believable to me. And I would say I like them. I have read books that I like where none of the characters have any redeeming qualities, but you still have one of them that you like, even though they're not that great a person. You really want them to survive through whatever the book is taking them through. So characters are important. And it does have to have something where you're interested in knowing what's going to happen. When we're editing each other's books, there's a lot of times where I have to go back and start editing again, because I get so involved in the story that I forget I'm editing and I'm just reading. So to me, if that happens, if I get really into a story so I can't put it down and keep wanting to know what's going to happen on the next page, that's when I know I've got a good book.
When you read some good fiction, do you feel like you can see it in your mind? Can you imagine the character and the things happening, like seeing the movie?
Yeah, I think I imagine. I even like sometimes it gets incorporated in dreams if it's clear enough visually in my head.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would certainly like to be able to write in a way that other people get those visions.
Yeah,
that's a great trick in writing. Is like, I know what I can see in my mind. Here's my picture right there. Can I put it down here so that you see it?
Yeah.
Or some simulation of it. They're not. Yeah, anyway, that's a huge one. That's kind of my goal in writing, I suppose.
If the writer is really good, you also can smell and taste the things that they're writing about, which is amazing.
There you go. That takes it up a notch. So let's see. We're going to have some readings. We're each of you will read or recite a portion. We didn't line up a schedule. Who's first? Alphabetical order. Draw a number. J. We got two J's there. J, K.
Just do alphabet. Jerry go first.
I don't mind. That's fine. All right, here. So I'm going to read actually the story I have in Crazy Buffet 2. I'm going to read just the first little section of it in there. And this was, you talk about writing. This was my first published piece because I was joined the group. And so it was a lot of fun for me to write. The group encouraged me to write something I knew. And as you mentioned in my bio, I spent a lot of time back in the 90s in Rwanda. So working in Rwanda right after the genocide. So this is historical fiction. It's fiction set in a history that I experienced. I experienced it as an American, but I experienced it. So here we go. This is the opening of Share Taxi. Foston jerked awake in his chair and instinctively swatted at his arm. In the dim light from his single desk lamp, he saw a cockroach hit the ground. It bounced on impact and then landed on its back. The creature's legs were desperately writhing as it sought traction. Foston looked around and realized he and the cockroach were alone in the third-floor office. Behind on his notary work, he had stayed after hours. What used to be a rubber stamp if someone had paid their fees was now a political nightmare. He was required to sift out any Tootsie papers that might have made it into the queue before April 7th. He couldn't recall when he fell asleep, but apparently it was on one Nakarumani family. He stacked his papers neatly and placed them in the wired incoming box. The precarious mound was higher than the mesh sides of the basket, and it threatened to topple at any moment. As he rose from the desk, Foston wiped his eyes, getting the sleep, that is what his mother always called it anyway, out of the corners. Removing the palm of his hand, Foston blinked a time or two, trying to convince himself to wake up for the trip home. It was then he again looked at the cockroach. Foston raised his foot over the bug and paused. The office mores was to kill them on sight. Some co-workers even made sport of their tiny carcasses. The place was infested. However, this particular one had the distinction of waking him up. Realizing he might have woken to the jeers of his office mates in the morning, Foston's worn soul, now towering over the impotent bug, held its position. Then, as if given an official sanctioned reprieve, his boot averted to the side where he gave it a gentle nudge. The bug slid across the floor but remained upside down. He again nudged it with his boot. This time the bug tumbled, found purchase, and was gone. Ungrateful pest, Foston uttered with a smile, threatening to overtake him.
I read that and I was hooked. I was like, because, well, I could go through here and talk about a number of things. The way you introduce the guy, not with a description of him, but just through all the things he does, we get to know him. And then this thing with his foot over the cockroach introduces a suspense, because I know right off, at least knowing literature, foreshadowing, this is alluding to some future events in someone's life here. What's the suspense is just introduced there in a way that's palpable.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, in Rwanda, the group that was being killed, they were called cockroaches. So that's the connect there down the line. The Hutus called all the Tutsi cockroaches. So that's the piece on the other side.
But I liked, he had fallen, I mean, how many of us, he falls asleep in his office. So he wakes up, you see the office there, old wooden floors, how it's late at night sometime. I don't think it says when, it doesn't matter at this point, but it's after hours. And he sees this cockroach on the floor. And you introduce the whole setting there of the military conflict gradually. I think it's a good example of, how do you introduce things without just saying, okay, let me tell you a story about a time in Rwanda, and you got to know all the background. It's just like unlayering of an onion or a good fruit or something. And I was like, okay, definitely ready to turn the page. Keep going. Let me ask, so when did you actually, was it a long time after you left Rwanda then? And this just
yeah, I didn't write this until I joined the group. So it would have been, I can't remember, Jim, you could help me out here. I joined 2 years ago, and I don't remember. I don't think you were starting the second one yet, were you? It was probably another 6 months before you started collecting stories for the second edition.
But you had left Rwanda at least 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah. So my time there ended probably the last time I went was 2001, maybe.
Okay. So back in your mind, all that's the way powerful memories are, I suppose. I'm just hinting around what inspired this, or what went into, can you tell us about when you wrote this, how it kind of came into your mind?
Sure. So, when I was there, I was meeting with people all the time. And I'll I'll never forget the times, and it was multiple times. It wasn't, the story's not one couple, but there were multiple times I met people who were what we would call biracial couples. One was a Hutu, one was a Tutsi, the two tribes that were fighting. And they usually had married before the war started, and so they had to work out the fact that they loved each other in a world that told them they weren't allowed to. And so I've just always carried that with me. The people I met who did that well, were just people that inspired me.
Okay.
And so there, it's not the particular story of one individual, but probably that, if there's an inspiration in it somewhere, that's probably it.
All righty. Let's move on to either Jimmy or Kelly. Who feels like reading? I'm sorry, I apologize. Should we go with Kelly? Are you ready to read yours?
Sure, I'll go ahead. I'm reading from the opening scenes of my third mystery titled The Tiger's Tale. 6 months ago, Bree had been a confirmed dog person until she'd inherited a cat from her murdered boss. Now she held a tiger by the tail, or rather by a leash, but when it came to tigers, the difference was just splitting hairs. Sweat trickled down her back as she scrambled over the barren baked earth following the energetic cub. Her foot caught and she stumbled. A strong male hand grabbed the leash and jerked the tiger onto the path. Bree suppressed a shiver of awareness and turned to Matthew Toogood, both grateful for and irritated by his presence. I can't believe we're doing this, he grumbled. Why are we here again? She rolled her eyes. My sorority is donating a cub to the vet school. If you recall, I'm the one who cut through the red tape for the donation. So let me rephrase. Why are we spending the day in a tourist trap? You should be preparing for your assignment. He kept his eyes trained on the distance as he leaned close, his breath warm on her ear, despite his harsh tone. Or have you forgotten about your mission? Bree disentangled the leash from his hands. I liked you better before I knew you were a spy. No, you liked my cover story. His voice softened and he looked at her. That's not the same thing. For what it's worth, I like you too. Despite the 90-degree heat, a shiver raced down her spine.
All righty. Nice. I don't know how to...
Whoa, what's this?
That's the way we clap in the coffee shops. Poetry.
Oh, yeah, the poetry stuff. Beatnik kind of inspired. All right.
So let's get some background. What goes into your imagination to inspire this kind of writing?
Well, the whole series started many, many years ago. I attended a workshop from a fairly well-known author who was talking about how to take a kernel of an idea and flesh it out. Mm-hmm. And she went around the table and she said, I want you to imagine a woman whose self-worth is defined by her career. And now I want you to imagine ways to throw that into chaos. So we had people saying, well, what if she got pregnant? What if she lost her job? But I had a particularly difficult time at work. And so when it came to me, I said, what if she found her boss dead and got accused of murdering him? To which the entire room asked me if I'd been having a bad week. Pardon me. But that became the kernel of this mystery story that I eventually came up with. And because I like shows like, I grew up with Mission Impossible and Get Smart and all of those things, I wanted to add the spy element into the mystery story as well. And partly I did that because in the mystery genre, a big deal is about having a community. But if you've ever watched Murder, She Wrote, you wonder how many people can die in Cabot Cove, and you know that the next visitor is always going to be the dead guy. And so I wanted to create a community that was mobile. And that's why I made this spy world, so they can move around and go to different venues and not kill everybody in the chemistry complex.
Okay. Well, it shows some great imagination there and put together really well. You know, the descriptions. I don't have the text in front of me, but from what you read, it just sounded like everything was just kind of rolls in a nice way.
When was traveling for my job, I had the luxury of going to visit a tiger sanctuary in Thailand. And I really, really wanted to write some of that into the story because it was such a cool adventure. We bottle fed baby tiger cubs and walked them and washed them, and it was just really cool. And so I started this with the scene in the tiger sanctuary just because I really wanted to share that with my readers and my friends.
What does your revision process look like? I mean, what did this look like in the original draft compared to now? Okay.
I'm one of those revise as you go people. So I start working on an idea and I write out a chapter, let's say, or a scene. And then the next day I'll reread that scene and I'll say, no, this doesn't belong here and this has to move there. And I'll make changes and then I'll go on to the next scene after that. But I spend a lot of time with the story unfolding in my imagination before I ever put pen to paper or keys to typewriter. So
Okay.
it takes a couple of drafts the way I do it, but it also takes longer to get those drafts done because I'm editing the whole time through.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
JimmyLee. And now let us get right. You're published under Kirkland, right? I mean, that's one of those. I have your name as JimmyLee Smith, but your book's under. How is it? JimmyLee Kirkland or
Kirkland. So
okay.
the first James Smith in my
Hey,
family.
Jimmy, can you adjust your volume just a little bit? See if you can turn up your
Okay.
volume a little bit.
Yeah, let's see if I can. Is that better?
Yes.
Well, hopefully.
Okay, I'll try to move closer to the mic. Yeah, the first James Smith in our family was James Kirkland, and then was adopted by the Smiths. So when I started writing, I thought I wanted to bring back my Scottish side and tag it onto the end there. Because Jim Smith is a pretty hard name to search for when you're Googling.
Wise, smart. Yeah, it'll just get lost.
Yeah.
Sounds better. All right. So what are you going to read for us tonight?
I'm going to read the first few paragraphs of Mama Oya, which is in Crazy Buffet, the barbecue edition, which is the second one. We called it that because we were meeting at the barbecue restaurant while we were coming up with this one. So this one is a little different than what I've done before. At the writers group, a lot of people presented like different things, different ways to write, like first stage, second stage, third stage, or in this case, I took the hero's journey, and the chapters are titled after the hero's journey, and I tried to use that to write a story. I hadn't done that before, so I thought the Crazy Buffet was a good chance to give that a shot. And so that's what came out of it. I'm big into witches and Twilight Zone and that kind of thing. So this is has a little bit of voodoo names in it and things like that. And it's called Mama Oya.
All right.
I can hear their wings against the darkness, she whispered. Paris, the angels are coming. In her house at night, I could almost hear their voices too. They're like distant whispers of the drops of rain on the roof. But whether it was angels, thunderstorms, hurricanes, swamp monsters, or any other thing from my nightmares, I always felt safe in her house. Her name was Oya. The mailbox said Johnson, but most of us that knew her called her Mama Oya. I heard she had 9 children, but I'd only met one, my best friend Nevada. I don't really remember meeting Nevada. We'd lived next door to each other since we were born, both on the same day, February 2nd. My mother worked long days at the market, and I spent after school hours and most of the summer days at Mama Oya's. And when Mama Oya went to supply gathering trips, Nevada would stay at our house. It was like we both had 2 mothers, and we lived in a home with a slim alley between some of the rooms. The houses were so close that Nevada and I each had one of those old people grabber sticks, and we passed things back and forth to each other from our bedroom windows. Nevada and I would go on great adventures in cardboard boxes that became trains, spaceships, or submarines. We created fantastic tales filled with complex characters and winding plots. My mother loved them and encouraged us to write them down. She taught us both to believe we would do anything we set our minds to, with the exception of a few bad machinations we had about making flying contraptions and testing them from the roof. She was always supportive of our ideas and especially encouraged our imagination.
This story is a suspenseful, beautiful romp with some kids in a fantasy world. Let me read another paragraph out of here. This is the first of chapter 2. A thunderstorm roared in that day at noon and seemed to be stuck over the town. At any other place, we might have been distracted from our adventure planning, but like I said, it always felt safe at Mama Oya's. But as evening turned to night, the storm was still hovering. I noticed Mama Oya standing at the French doors that looked out into the courtyard behind our houses. She would pace back and forth between the doors and the window. It was like she was keeping guard or watch out. Then she turned to us, and in the most serious voice I have ever heard her use, everyone, down to the basement, now. You have to read more. You have to buy the book if you want to know how it ends.
Why the basement?
Young Southern writers would very much appreciate.
Oh no, your screen froze again.
Oh, we lost her.
Should we pause?
She was going to say something nice.
I'm going to pause. We're back.
So you said just a minute ago, you have to find out what's going on. And I know the Young Southern writers would very much appreciate it if you picked up a copy of The Crazy Buffet.
Yeah. Okay.
Plug.
So what goes on in your, as a writer, where does this kind of story start for you, JimmyLee?
There's usually some Twilight Zone-y kind of thing I've come up with in my head about ghosts or witches or such. And in this case, I got to thinking angels are always presented as these good characters, with the exception of Doctor Who has some scary angels. But I got to think, what if they're not angels that we think of, like biblical kind of angels, but angels are something else? And I decided to make them a sort of monster. And then I had to decide who they would battle. And I went directly to voodoo for some reason. That's just how my mind works. So I picked a couple of voodoo god and goddesses and gave them some kids to battle the angels for them.
Okay. Well, it's an exciting little read. And let's see, what else can we ask about that? So did you get inspired after you took a trip somewhere, or just walking down the road one day, your mind, do you always think in these kinds of circles, just like?
Yeah, I sort of always, my mind's always going around that. Yeah.
Okay.
I had been to New Orleans maybe a year or so before that, but New Orleans is always in my mind too. In the book Witches, it has different, each episode has sort of like a different legend behind it. And in the 4th episode, I bring in a voodoo legend. So of course I have to throw in a little bit of New Orleans into that.
I'm gonna interrupt here and say, it was one of my first times to meet with the group, and I remember we read the story, we're talking on that section, we're talking about it, and then we got like a whole discussion about levees in New Orleans. Because there was something you wanted, and you're like, can you have those in New Orleans?
Yeah, I had them going up a large ridge, and then someone pointed out, where is this story written? I said, well, I had in my mind New Orleans or Baton Rouge, and they said, well, there's no hills there. And I was like, oh, wow. So now I have to go and rewrite a whole section because there's no large ridge for them to be taking a day to climb up. So
it's a great example of what we do in the group, right? Like great story. We were enjoying the story and then giving each other feedback. And then we got in a whole discussion of whether it mattered because you didn't call it New Orleans. And so you can put a ridge wherever you want, right? And I remember that being one of my first times and just being struck, like the friendships and the camaraderie, but also the willingness to help each other out.
Just move it to Chattanooga. We got lots of ridges here.
Yeah.
So
The brainstorming that can come out of this group is just phenomenal. And whenever I'm stuck with a plot point, I can always count on the group to come help me find ways around it or out of it or challenge me so that I find my own way. And that's just a wonderful thing as a writer, to have a group of people you can count on to do that.
well, this group seems to typify everything we want to see happening at the Chattanooga Writers Guild. And our goal is certainly to see all of our writers have resources and be successful and tap into these kinds of relationships. So that's going to wrap up our time. Do you want to, in parting now, let's see, what projects are you going to plug before you go? Jerry, what's the book that you're going to launch on October 1st?
So I actually have the cover, the pseudo cover here. It's 12 Hours on the Block. So it's a story of a modern day prison, but some of the prisoners are the Aztec gods of creation. So it takes some spin, fun little retelling of a myth. And it's available on Amazon now for pre-order, but it launches October 1st. So.
Okay, well, you'll have to send the information to the newsletter person and we'll get that, a post on it.
Okay.
And then JimmyLee, your book, what was it? Witches?
I have Witches that will be coming out hopefully in October. That's the plan. And it's 4 episodes in one book. And then of course I also have to plug Crazy Buffet, the barbecue edition, because we're trying to get more money for young Southern student writers. So.
And Kelly, do you have a project coming up?
I don't have a release date for my latest project, so you're just going to have to keep watching. I'd love to have people come start the Undercover Cat series. I can tell you that book number 4 is entitled Studying Scarlet the Gray. It's got a scarlet, an African gray parrot as one of the characters who's going to be instrumental in helping solve the murder mystery. And hopefully that will be out early next year.
I want to thank the members of the Crazy Buffet Writers Group. And there's so many good ones that aren't here tonight. We didn't go through. Do you want to, let's throw out the names. Who else is part of it? Calvin being, oh, well, we'll probably forget someone, then they'll feel bad. I know there's some great writers in there. Most, if we look through the contents of this, I could read them, but I'm rambling. Let's finish. Thanks.
There's always room for one more at the Crazy Buffet Club, so come on down and see if we fit your writing needs.
Thanks for taking your time.
Crazy, but
to talk.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking your time to talk writing, and okay, thank you.